Hey, Essie, what's up?
What's up is that I'm stuck on the worst planet in the galaxy.
That's what I've been saying.
Vanessa's not so bad. I'll tell you a bad planet. Hoth. Just snow and wampas. Wampas and snow.
Welcome in to the newest episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Glad to have you joining us for episode 98. We're going to be talking all things Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy in our review of the newly released Disney Plus 4 episode show today. Shout out to that first clip as well. They're hating on Hoth in this show. I don't know. Are we gonna think we're some disapproving thoughts of this show because they're hating on our favorite planet, or are we going to have some positive thoughts? You have to tune in to find out. But it's going to be a fun one today. Both Joey and I and Gibbo as well all really enjoyed this show. And before we get into our discussion of Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy today, I want to give you a quick reminder that if you're not yet subscribed to the Hoth Hangout podcast on YouTube, check us out there for the video version of every podcast. And thank you to the 454 of you who are currently subscribed over there. You can also check out all of our reactions to the latest Star Wars shows, including our two-part reaction to Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, available on YouTube now. Check it out and see what it has to offer. Thank you to the 454 of you once again who are subbed over there on YouTube. You can contact us via email at hothhangout@gmail.com with your Star Wars thoughts, questions, or otherwise, and we'd love to showcase them here on the pod. Speaking of the Hoth Hangout podcast, you can find it in audio format wherever you get your pods, including both Apple and Spotify. And if you're listening on either of those platforms or any platform that allows you to leave a 5-star review, leave a 5-star review on the podcast. We'd appreciate it very much. And it does also allow the Hoth Hangout podcast to be more easily discovered by other people who love Star Wars as well. We're on the socials on TikTok, Instagram, and X at Hoth Hangout on each of those platforms. Follow us there, as well as checking out the Hoth Hangout Community Discord server. The link to join that will be found down in the show notes of today's episode. Our viewer teaser question of the day going into the discussion is, how would you rate Rebuild the Galaxy on a scale of 1 to 10? How did you enjoy this show compared to some of the recent Star Wars shows? And just what is your general thoughts about it, stepping away from the potentially first season of the show? We might be getting a second season. That remains to be seen. But we'll be talking about that today as well. And before we get into any of that, what's going on, Joey? How have you been, dude?
Pretty good. This was a fun week. This was a fun week of going through this Rebuild the Galaxy. I've been looking around Twitch for people that are actually building some of these Legos from Rebuild the Galaxy. They have the Dark Falcon. There are some other builds that are from Rebuild the Galaxy. So maybe I have to pick up one of those because they look pretty sweet. So, but yeah, it's been a good week so far, and just excited to talk about this fun, super serious show that is Rebuild the Galaxy.
Yeah, a show that probably for the better, because it didn't take itself too seriously. That like added to the greatness of the show itself. And like we mentioned earlier, we'll be getting into more of that discussion today. But before we get into any of our discussion about Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, got a couple quick pieces of news and viewer comments from the latest episodes that we want to highlight. First of all, our first of 2 pieces of news today is about the one and only Obi-Wan Kenobi himself. Ewan McGregor was honored this week with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Pretty cool as well. I honestly didn't even know that he was up for a star. I'm surprised he didn't have one already, but someone who is
Mhm.
very deserving. And it's cool if you're watching the video version of the podcast to see just kind of how happy he is in these photos, especially the fact that not only is his significant other there with him, but also Hayden Christensen looks like he made the trip for the honoring of Ewan McGregor's star. It's fun to see the friendship and the relationship they have in real life too. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, to think of how many years ago that they first met, with on Attack of the Clones there. Just imagine all the stuff that they had gone through, all of the let's admit it, the prequel wasn't fully accepted into Star Wars when it first came out, so there was a little bit of the hatred probably going towards Hayden and probably the cast as a whole. For them to kind of be there for each other during that time, And then over the years, many, over the decades, have to go through their own careers and then to come back here, which I think is like the best part. After all of that is done, they kind of go their separate ways for a long time, and now they come back to here, back to Star Wars. Now have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and see them together again is just amazing, and it's just a cool little warm, cozy little story there that at the end.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe Hayden will get one someday too, and Ewan will be able to be there to support his good old buddy Hayden in the process as well. But
That would be something.
yeah, shout out to Ewan McGregor, officially a recipient of a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Congratulations, Mr. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Our other piece of news for today is about Donald Glover, previously known or formerly known as, I should say, Childish Gambino, and of course the actor who portrayed the younger version of Lando Calrissian in the Solo movie back in 2018, if my memory serves me correctly. I think that was the right year that it came out. But he recently did an interview, sat down with the Wall Street Journal and did kind of like a candid corner interview, more or less. They asked him about all kinds of things that he's been involved with and different projects and parts of his career and aspects of his life. And one of the segments that they did within this interview was a quick, like I think it was about 45 seconds or so segment on Star Wars and kind of um, just what his, um, I guess, hope is for the role of the character of Lando, and kind of both his experience of what it was like to portray the character. Joey, I'll turn this one to you because I know this is your favorite Star Wars character, perhaps. What did you think about the interview with Donald Glover?
I mean, let's just remember that my favorite character of all of Star Wars, and probably one of my favorite actors in Donald Glover. This couldn't get any better. So any time that any news comes up with soon to be hopefully solo shows or Lando shows or movies, I'm here for it. So the big thing he says here, he just wants it to be fun, and a lot of serious things are happening in the world, and one thing he does, maybe I don't know if criticizes is the right word, but maybe possibly criticize Star Wars for is for being too serious too much. So maybe that's kind of what he's looking at. I think about Solo, and that's very much where the vibe I get from that movie is that it was just fun. It had a little bit of consequence, but I mean, there's so much to it. At the end of it, there's Maul, so there's that whole question of what's going to happen if there's going to be a sequel to Solo. So and I think that was probably the best part of that movie is that it did still very much feel like Star Wars, but at the same time, it wasn't as serious as all of that. So whereas something like Rogue One was very serious, and very Star Wars. Something like Andor, very serious and very Star Wars. So I think Donald Glover here has it right, where it just needs to be a little bit lighter, have more fun with it, and yeah, I'm looking forward to of course, whatever projects he has coming forward, but of course the Lando show or movie.
Yeah, I think for me, Solo, when I think of any Star Wars movie where my opinion of it doesn't seem to match like the popular opinion amongst most Star Wars fans, I feel like for me it's probably Solo. Meaning that I tend to like this movie a lot more than I think. Like if you looked up like a Star Wars movie tier list, like Solo always feels like it's in like, I don't know, like ninth place and below.
Hmm.
If not even like dead last on some people's lists, which I think to me is crazy that you could put Solo last. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox on that one, but just like you said, it's a fun movie. I enjoyed it for what it was. Probably of all the Disney films, I do like Rogue One more, but I think
Sure.
Solo is a stronger film than people give it credit for. And people had flaws with it about, all the Han Solo stuff. But anyways, that's kind of not the point of why we're talking about this. His role in that film did make it fun. Like when he popped up on
Hmm.
screen as Lando, it was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen any of Atlanta or not, but
Yeah, yeah. First couple seasons.
yeah, like that was my only, I think at the time, my only experience was seeing him in acting, and I really liked his role in that show, and so, getting to see, like, a character primarily from another show inserted into the world of Star Wars is just kind of a really fun experience. And for me,
Mhm.
that was the takeaway I had seeing Donald Glover in the role of Lando, and I thought he pulled it off really well.
Yeah, for me, it was a Community that he was in. So I
Yeah,
watched, like, 5 seasons of him in Community, and
yeah, yeah.
he's a goofball in that one. It's a comedy, obviously. So to see him into this more of a serious role, but very still, it's very much in his wheelhouse. The Lando is.
Right. Yeah, maybe someday we will get that Lando movie or Lando show. It feels like it's been placed on the back burner for the time being, but hopefully we get to see him in the role once again someday soon. But shout out to Donald Glover for the fun interview he did with the Wall Street Journal and all the positive thoughts and sentiments about Star Wars that he shared in that interview too. So
Go Lando.
go Lando. We had a couple viewer comments from last week's podcast episode, as well as our reaction over on YouTube to the Rebuild the Galaxy parts 1 and 2 or episodes 1 and 2, I should say. The first comment is from Beanpile, and we have I think a video clip queued with this one that's going to give more reference. So take a listen and hear this clip from last week's
Who
episode.
is this Imperial?
Jeez. I have never seen her in my life. Lieutenant uh, Amanda.
Amanda.
So if you missed it last week on the Hoth Hangout podcast, we played trivia, and the entire theme and category of that episode was all things animated Star Wars. I was shown this picture of this character that I had never seen before in my life, and I just called her Lieutenant Amanda. And so it's like, I think a couple days after that, maybe like 2 or 3 days after we had released the episode, and so at that point it had probably actually been more like 4 or 5 days since we recorded it, and I see this comment on the Hoth Hangout YouTube studio, and it says from Beanpile, it says, "I have never seen her in my life. LOL Amanda." And in my brain, I'm like, "Is this a bot comment? Like, it's not like it's like LOL Amanda. What is this in reference to?" And I literally didn't even remember that this was a quote that came out of my mouth as we were playing trivia. So, shout out to Beanpile for quoting me on that one, and my apologies that I initially thought it might be a bot comment. But yeah, to this day, I need to go back and watch that episode. So, we also do have another comment from Beanpile that said, "I loved JEJ, James Earl Jones, in Coming to America and Sneakers." We did do that little segment on last week's episode of the pod honoring James Earl Jones. I guess, but he's been maybe is it 7 days to the day at the time of this recording? I think since his passing. So, yeah, we had some good sentiments shared around kind of his life and his work and the impact he's made not only on Star Wars but on movies as a whole and just the film industry. So shout out to Beanpile for both of those comments. We also had a comment on that trivia episode from Lord Galvatron, who said, "I surprisingly managed to get 3 out of 36 for this trivia." You know what's funny? I have an IRL friend who listens to the podcast, and she
Mhm.
texted me today actually and said she got 3 out of 36 as well. So it feels like 3 is the number for people
Yeah.
on last week's trivia
And I'm
episode.
not feeling so bad. I'm not feeling so bad about our scores now that we've got at least 2 other people that scored lower than us.
Yeah, there you go. What was it? You had 7 and I had 6. Is that what it was?
Something like that.
Yeah. And then in response to last week's question of the week, Lord Galvatron said, "It's got to be Vader, and it's gonna be hard for whoever steps into any future Vader roles to not replicate his voice. P.S. You can't do it." Yeah, and I think that's why Disney kind of took the steps to record his voice and I guess like modulate it into like an AI Vader program or whatever. Prior
Mhm.
to the release of the Kenobi show, they brought James Earl Jones in, and who knows how many just like probably massive amount of tracks they got of him saying all sorts of different lines so that they could emulate his voice with AI in the future. But I would be shocked if anyone else ever tries to
Correct,
do
yeah.
the voice of Vader, unless it's in, like, a completely different, like, style and format, like, it's like a like Star Wars anime or something
Yeah, I was
like
about to say
that.
that. Yeah, something like
Yeah.
Visions or something like that would
Right.
be all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Even then, I feel like they would probably. It's still so iconic. They'd probably still use his voice, but yeah. So yeah. Shout out to Lord Galvatron for that comment, and shout out to everyone that watched last week's episode of the podcast with the trivia. Hope you guys enjoyed the questions prepared by Trivia Master Givo. We also do have 2 comments from, the part 1 of the 2 videos we released of the LEGO Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy reaction. This one is from Psycho Emmy. Psycho Emmy says, "Ooh, looks super fun, but LEGO anything is always good fun for me." And, Joey, I feel like you can attest to that. Isn't that right?
I feel like they are my alter ego, Psycho
Yeah.
Emmy.
This
But
is
yeah,
your alt account, isn't it?
yeah, this is my alter account. I've been found for sure. But yeah, anything Lego, I could watch anything Lego. They just have such good writers that produce that write for these Lego shows and movies.
Yeah. Yeah, it was done really well, and, it was super fun, so appreciate you for that comment, Psycho Emmy, on the reaction on YouTube. Additionally, on that same video, Spy on Sports commented, "Loved it. Lego Star Wars is the only animated Star Wars for me." Spy on Sports is notoriously known as our resident, not the biggest fan of animated Star Wars, which is fair. Which is fair. Uh, he also goes on to say, "Is it just me, or was the cornerstone not in the corner?" That's true. It was kind of just like in the
Yeah, in the
center of
middle. Yeah,
of the base of the wall.
it's
Uh,
symbolic.
yeah. It's a symbolic corner. He went on to say IMDb doesn't have episode 2 credits yet, but Sam Witwer is in the cast. Voice work in this is amazing. Gaten Matarazzo from Stranger Things kills it as Sig. Can't wait to watch episodes 3 and 4. Those were also incredible episodes. And we're going to be talking a lot here in the next couple minutes about just some of the stacked voice acting that this show had to show off for just kind of the incredible talent that it had. Um, some really really great actors involved with this project. So thank you to Spy on Sports, and thank you to all those of you who commented on last week's episode of the podcast and these most recent days reactions over on YouTube for the Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy videos. We had last week's poll we wanted to share with you. We released that poll every week on the YouTube community tab as well as on Twitter, or I guess formerly known as Twitter, now known as X. The question last week was, "What is your favorite James Earl Jones role?" Uh, in no surprise, it looks like the winner on both YouTube and X was Darth Vader, getting 87% of the vote on YouTube, with Mufasa and King. I'm gonna mispronounce this. Is it
Jaffe Joffer.
Jaffe Joffer? I don't even know if
That,
I know what film that's from. What?
that's from Coming to America.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But each of those did also receive 7%, as well as over on X, Darth Vader got 75% of the vote. Other getting 25% of the vote on X. So you got to head on over to the Hoth Hangout X account to see what some of those other responses might have been.
I think the other one was like Field of Dreams or something like that he was in, if
Oh,
I'm
you
not
know what?
mistaken.
You know what else he's in that I completely forgot about? The Sandlot.
Yeah, Sandlot, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Man,
Very
very
short
nice.
role, but yeah.
Yeah, iconic. Well, thank you to those of you who cast your vote in last week's polls. As previously mentioned, you can vote each week on the YouTube community tab or over on the Hoth Hangout X account to cast your vote in this week's poll, which will be in reference to Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. So keep an eye out for it, and we'll release the results of those polls on next week's episode of the podcast. As we mentioned earlier, today's episode is about all things Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. Gonna have a fun discussion today. We're gonna be focusing a lot on the voice actors, as well as just some of the aspects of the show, kind of like self awareness, some pleasant surprises, some of the role swaps, kind of where we'll be headed today with our discussion and the roadmap for what we'll be talking about. But to kick us off, we're just going to kind of go through the list of just incredible voice talent that this show has to offer. It's kind of a mix of bringing on some new people, which are, pretty well known names, as well as returning Star Wars voice actors like Sam Witwer. For those who don't know, played Darth Maul in the Clone Wars, played Starkiller in the Force Unleashed games, as well as just a variety of other roles throughout the Star Wars universe. He does reprise his role as Maul in in this show, and also today's episode is going to be filled with what we are referring to as Gibbo fun facts. Gibbo has researched and inserted many fun facts throughout the episode to provide us with some extra information and content on each of these voice actors depicting these roles. And so for Sam Witwer, who played the role of Maul, the costume that Maul is wearing in this is actually the same costume that Lando wears from Solo. What'd you think about the inclusion of Darth Maul? I guess just Maul in this as this kind of happy-go-lucky character in Rebuild the Galaxy.
Now, when I saw him wearing the yellow shirt, that it did come to my mind that maybe that was Lando's from Solo, but I hadn't mentioned it. But yeah, now that we have them next to each other, yeah, that's absolutely even down to the red belt. It looks like that Lando has in Solo. So yeah, and it makes more sense now because he's obviously he was like the happy-go-lucky kind of guy. Lando was he just kind of chill, kind of relaxed, same kind of vibe. So I can see it, and I appreciate the shout out to Lando here.
Yeah, what's going on with this tie thing he's wearing, by the way? What do you think about that?
I couldn't pull it off, but Lando can.
Yeah, yeah. Well, kind of a fun reprisal there with Sam Witwer getting to play Maul once again in this show. Another returning Star Wars veteran actor is Ahmad Best, notoriously known for playing the role of Jar Jar Binks, kind of going through this intense period of really undeserved hate from the fandom in the early 2000s, and then kind of being re-welcomed back into the fandom. Even had a role, if I'm not mistaken, that was not in a
Kenobi?
I think it was.
Was
Oh,
that
it
in
was a
Kenobi?
Kenobi flashback scene.
Yeah,
Yes.
Kenobi. Yeah.
Or
Mandalorian.
no, it might have been Mandalorian. Yeah, I was gonna say
Mandalorian.
because it involves
Grogu.
Grogu. Yeah, yeah. So he got to play kind of like himself in live action, but as a Jedi, which was pretty cool. But yes, most well known for playing the role of Jar Jar. For years, I would assume a lot of Star Wars fans probably know this, but in case you don't, there have been kind of theories touted around for the longest time, past 20 years plus, really since the release of Revenge of the Sith, that the ultimate villain of the Star Wars prequel trilogy is actually Jar Jar Binks, and people
Yes.
have speculated that he's actually a Sith Lord in hiding. And so part of what Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy does so well is it leans into the memes and into the inside jokes within the Star Wars community. And this is one of the best examples of that. And so, who better for Jar Jar to be in this show, this other galaxy, than the Sith version of himself, Darth Jar Jar? And the Gibbo fun fact for this one is that he tells the heroes he has always been the Phantom Menace, referencing the movie title from the first film and the fan debate on who or what actually was the Phantom Menace. Joey, is Jar Jar
I'm.
actually the real Phantom Menace?
I mean, look at his eyes. Clearly, that is a Phantom Menace to be feared. And the dual lightsaber, I always love the dual lightsaber here. That era of when Darth Maul came out with that back then, that was just you saw it and you're like, oh, that's incredible. I don't know how you're ever going to beat that. Now you kind of see it everywhere, but still, just to have Jar Jar here, and also to have a Med Best back once again, it's just like the Hayden story. You just love seeing the Star Wars fandom kind of I want to say aloud. That sounds kind of like but basically enjoy Ahmed Best for all he is in these roles that he plays. Whether it's Jar Jar, whether it's that Jedi, I forget the name of it, but yeah, the Jedi he played in Mandalorian. Just it's just good to see him back.
Yeah. Any Darth Jar Jar theories? Is he the master villain, the master Sith of this show? Is it not Dev and it's actually him?
Yes,
Yes.
we love it.
Uh, Comment down below your best Darth Jar Jar theories. We're excited to see those as well, and hopefully, if we get a season 2, we get to see more of Darth Jar Jar. Kelly Marie Tran was reprising her role as Rose, although this time as Darth Rose Tico, or maybe it's just Darth Tico is how it's credited in the show credits. But in the film, in The Last Jedi, the medallion she wears is split in half. However, in the Rebuild the Galaxy show, the medallion she's wearing around her neck is actually a hole. Kind of an
Yes.
interesting note to point out. What do you think that might mean?
Well, in Last Jedi, her sister actually had the other half.
Right.
So, and her sister dies early. Well, like in the first scene of
Yeah.
that movie. So, I got to think that her sister is alive somewhere in the galaxy. Either that or Darth Tico did some Darth Tico things, and the sister's not around, and you know what I'm
Ooh.
saying. So maybe that's the dark theory of that. You know what? That's my headcanon. I like that. I like that theory that Darth Tico kind of went a little too Darth Tico, and the sister is no longer around. So I like that. Shout out to Gibbo for that fun fact. I did not catch that first time around.
Yeah, I definitely didn't either. And another actor who has, been unfairly the recipient of a lot of hate from Star Wars fans, and similar to Ahmad Best being reincorporated into this show, in a role that is so different from the role they're used to playing, but still like kind of the same role at the same time, and being able to like lean into some of the sillier aspects of Rebuild the Galaxy and kind of come back and portray that character. So, glad to have Kelly Marie Tran back on this cast. Bobby Moynihan, probably most well known from his roles on SNL, who I think is absolutely hilarious. And I was not even aware this was his voice the entire time we were watching.
Mhm.
Plays Jedi Bob. And in order to kind of understand Jedi Bob, like I did not know this prior to watching this, uh, but Jedi Bob first appeared as a minifigure called Jedi Knight in the 2002 Lego set, the 7163 Republic gunship, based on Episode 2 Attack of the Clones. He was later dubbed Jedi Bob by fans and was even labeled as such in 2009's Lego Star Wars, the Visual Dictionary. Jedi Bob's last name, Afal, which is something that you pointed out while we were watching, Joey, is based on the acronym AFAL, which stands for Adult Fans of Lego. And so, like I mentioned, he's voiced by Bobby Moynihan, probably most well known for his roles on SNL, and also voiced by Orca in Star Wars Resistance. Is Jedi Bob in Star Wars Resistance? Am I blanking on his
No,
role in?
no, that's a totally different character in Star Wars Resistance.
Oh, we're saying Bobby
Yeah, he
Moynihan.
also voiced Orca.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, I was
Yeah, yeah,
confused there for a second. I was like, I feel like I would have recognized if Jedi Bob was in Resistance, but
yeah.
um, yeah, he is a. I mean, I would probably say that I think Sig is my favorite character of Rebuild the Galaxy,
Hmm.
but Jedi Bob is a close second.
Yes,
I really loved the role that he adds to this show. So,
right.
um, and speaking of kind of that protagonist counterpart, Sig, is it Gatton or Gayton? I've actually never known.
I think it's
Oh,
Gaten.
Gaten, yeah.
Gaten Matarazzo from Stranger Things uh, portrayed the main character of Rebuild the Galaxy, Sig Griebling. Like I said, probably my favorite character of the show. Feels like he has the ability to be humorous, be comedic, be funny, and also at the same time, somehow you feel deeply connected to a Lego character in what is probably like 85 minutes of total runtime. You're like, wow, I feel super connected to this character and like his mission to get his brother back, and just a phenomenal job portraying the role of Sig by Gayton. And the fun fact about this character is that greebling is a process that many Lego builders undertake to add detail to their builds, which is thought to be termed by George Lucas. I've never heard this before. Are you
Yeah, that's
familiar with this, Joey?
not familiar of this. Definitely not familiar that George Lucas came with it, but I am somewhat familiar with like the process. It's basically trying to give more detail to, and this is more for the really hardcore Lego builders who kind of free build, and maybe not so much like off of the manuals, like kind of like what I do. Like I buy a Lego set, and then but then they have, they have actual like little parts that you can add to
Like these
the
little parts.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like these little parts here, to make it more detailed. Gibbo's showing up a little a model set here with what basically you like crack off the little pieces, put them on. You could put them on there. So just to give them more detail, make them look more interesting. I do really like how they cater to the not only the Star Wars fans but the Lego fans. With
Yeah.
like in the previous actor, you have the uh the AFAL last name, and now with this with the Griebling, it's just cool that they're kind of giving a not even like subtle nods. I mean, these are like really big ones to the people, to the fans of Lego and of Star Wars.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's something that's not only catering to Star Wars fans, but also Lego fans at the same time, which I wouldn't have expected coming into the show. So that was fun to see as well. Sig, probably my favorite character from the show, but we can debate that here in a second. Tony Revol I struggle with his last name. Revolori, there we go. Tony Revolori, who played Flash Thompson in the Spider-Man MCU movies, played the role of Dev, or as he's known in the alternate galaxy, Darth Devastator, the brother of Sig Griebling. The Devastator was actually Darth Vader's flagship in A New Hope. Fun fact. So Darth Devastator is a character that you oddly feel connected to as well by the end of the 4th episode. You're like,
Hmm.
"Wow, this relationship between Sig and Dev, like, I did not realize how deep it was going to get for a Lego show." You're like, "Okay, I see that this show has some substance between the characters of Dev and Sig, and kinda their relationship, and it's not just all about the laughs and the humor." So another actor who was able to be inducted into the Star Wars universe with this awesome role of Darth Devastator. And then, of course, to round us out, what would a Star Wars show be without C3PO and the great Mark Hamill? But first of all, Anthony Daniels reprises his role as C3PO. However, this time he's a bounty hunter. And, he's even sporting the same red eyes that he had during his memory bypass in Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. He also flies a Naboo Royal Starship, which is painted gold instead of silver. And I think when we were
It's right on.
watching. Yeah, it is, yeah, and when we were watching this scene, when that starship first came on, I was like, "Huh, is Jar Jar gonna be flying that?" Because, like Naboo, I was like, I thought that would be the tie-in, but and then
Oh
when we
right, yeah.
and then when we saw it with C-3PO, I was like, "Oh my gosh." And then, of course, Anthony Daniels probably has more Star Wars credits to his name than any other actor. Is that fair to say?
I would think so. Yeah, I mean, he's in these animated shows. He's all across the even the TV shows. So I think he's probably in there. But I mentioned this during the when we were watching it. This must have been so fun for Anthony Daniels to be C3PO but not C3PO. Just
Right.
the the bounty hunter kind of killer instinct type of C3PO. It must have been a ton of fun for him to still be in that role but take it a completely different way.
Yeah, I could just see him getting, like, joyful being told by the directors, like, "Okay, here's what you wanna do." He's like, "Oh, good. This is going to be that was a terrible Anthony
That was
Daniels,
okay. If we could,
but
we can clip that for the clip
yeah,
show.
yeah.
That would be great.
And then, of course, as I just mentioned, Mark Hamill playing Luke Skywalker. I don't know about you, I couldn't tell that this was him when we first started watching it, and then, like, as we kept listening to it, we were like, "I think that is Mark Hamill. I think that is
Hmm.
him." And it is him playing the role of Luke in Rebuild the Galaxy. And actually, it's a fun fact about this character in the show is that um, while we don't know where Padme is in this galaxy, Luke is wearing the necklace that Anakin gave to her in the Phantom Menace that he made for her. And so, kind of interesting to note as well that
Season
Luke would
two.
be, yeah, season two. Yeah. I think the connection there is supposed to be like he was pod racing on Tatooine. And so, but I'm not sure how that really connects to Padme. So, yeah, like you said, maybe we get more info on that in season 2. But I mean, just to have actors in this show like Mark Hamill, Anthony Daniels, you know, these people who are synonymous with what the brand of Star Wars is. I think it's just really cool and really special to have them a part of this as well.
Yeah, I think we're lucky that we are able to have these characters not only in live action but also in animated form. Because I mean, a lot of the other characters. I mean, you look back during Clone Wars, even it wasn't Hayden that was voicing Anakin, for instance, and same with Obi-Wan, and I mean, so but at the same time, like those voices, like the Ashley Eckstein of for Ahsoka, they became part of Star Wars, so kind of like what you said with Gaten and as well as Tony Revolori. They are now kind of part of the Star Wars family, which is really cool. Bobby Moynihan, same thing. He has not only been Jedi Bob, but he's been Orca, and we'll probably hear him on other things. And Sam Witwer, that's very definitely somebody who is synonymous with Star Wars, especially in the animated form. So just kind of it's kind of cool just seeing this continue to grow, having the Star Wars family continue to reach out to different actors. And I know we're not talking about live action right now, but like Jude Law, for instance, in Skeleton Crew, like you just keep getting all these actors, all this talent coming into the Star Wars world, and hope to see more.
Yeah, it's a fun headcanon game to play of like, oh, who could play that role in the future and who might we see in Star
Hmm.
Wars? The options are practically limitless. So exciting times to be a Star Wars fan, and what an incredible cast of characters in the first season of Rebuild the Galaxy. Hopefully, there's more seasons to come. But um, to continue our discussion about this show, we wanted to highlight just like how self aware this show feels. We've talked a little bit already about kind of the uh, awareness of the fandom's, feelings about Jar Jar and, like, these speculations about Darth Jar Jar theories. But some other ways that the show really felt self-aware is 'cause, the clones, are all just basically copies of Admiral Akbar, clones of Admiral Akbar. Uh, and there's a moment in the, first episode where, Sig has just, like, been transported to this other new galaxy after removing the cornerstone, and he says to the Admiral Akbar clones, "I think you're dead."
Right.
Of course, referencing the fact that in the actual Star Wars timeline, I believe it was at the beginning of Last Jedi when the bridge is blown up, that Admiral Akbar meets his end in that film, but kind of a funny moment in that regard as well, because I think a lot of fans, when Admiral Akbar was killed in that movie, were kind of upset that they could just get rid of an iconic character like that quickly and in such of a kind of a harsh manner, more or less, with that explosion.
Yeah, and it was real. I think the anger around that was really how quickly they wrote him off. It wasn't even, if he had some type of honorable death, even in that way, I think that would have been fine. But the way they just said, yeah, everyone on the bridge has died, including Admiral Akbar, and that was it. That was like the only mention that he was even there. So you knew that he was gone already at that time. So I think that was the fandom's argument to that. But getting back to this, just that one, the first thing you see when he pulls off his helmet is the Mon Calamari, and the first thing he says is it's a trap, and then everyone else, all the other clones yell at it too. It was just pure fun.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely lean into that pretty hard, and, my personal favorite way the show was self-aware was at the very beginning when Sig is, like, telling the story of the galaxy to his friends around the campfire, and
Mhm.
he's basically retelling the events of the prequel, original, and sequel trilogies, and when he gets to the sequel trilogy and he's talking about Rey, and he's like, "She was a Skywalker." "Well, kind of. She was kind of a Skywalker." It's like it's making like, humor of it without really, like, taking a side and, like, saying, like,
Right.
"Well, she's not a Skywalker," and, like, "Well, she is a Skywalker," and it's almost like uniting the opposing sides on the sequel films by saying, "She was kind of a Skywalker," and it's also it's just funny, and I actually I had a moment where I was like, "Wow, that's very well done." I thought that was kind of one of the more underrated
Oh
self-aware
yeah.
moments of this show, but
Yeah, I think that was a top tier moment right there because I think you and I like audibly laughed out loud when when they said we laughed a lot actually during
Yeah.
this entire season, but with this one in particular, yeah, this was when we knew what we were getting into, I think, where right away we were like, okay, they're gonna poke fun at some of the things that maybe other fans or the fandom may have issues with, and this was definitely one of them. I remember seeing videos of people like just screaming at the end of the Rise of Skywalker, kind of in both ways, where she would say, who are you, Ray Skywalker. I've watched videos where people were like laughing at that part, and there were people that were like standing up and cheering. So to have that division there of the fandom, like you said, I think this scene alone kind of just says, okay, listen, we know it exists out there, right? But we do want to at least acknowledge it, mention it, poke a little fun at it too, without going into so much discussion about what it actually means.
And also,
Right.
straight after this, Luke jumps on her back and says, "I'm cranky," like he was in the last few movies.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Luke's role in relation to Ray in this scene was pretty good too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm cranky, and then he's like Yoda. He's like Yoda basically,
Yeah, yeah,
because he was training her like Yoda trained him for that week.
yeah.
I'll say it again, a week.
There were all sorts of other, like, self-aware moments in this, but another one that we wanted to highlight that we thought was a kind of a self-aware moment, but more just, like, really funny because it referenced just the 7th film's title, is when, Dev and Sig are talking to each other, and Dev is getting excited about, Sig's ability to use the Force, be a Force builder, and he looks at him, he goes, "The Force is awakening, bro," and it was just, like, this moment of, like it feels like what, like, a teenage boy would say in, like, this world of Star Wars to his brother, like, "Dude, the Force is awakening, bro." It was
Right,
just,
right, yeah.
it's just kind of on the nose for how the characters you would think they would act with one another, so,
Yeah,
uh
whoever wrote that line is definitely has a teenager at home,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they're like, okay, we got to throw the word "bro" in here at least once into these shows.
Yeah, yeah, and speaking of Dev and Sig, the show also had plenty of surprises. It wasn't just about, just the humor and the comedy and the laughs like we said earlier. I mean, the storyline for Rebuild the Galaxy, especially with Dev and Sig, was really good, like, surprisingly good. I don't know about you, but I did not watch this show expecting it to be, like, emotionally moving that they would have this significant relationship that because of what happens, Sig can't get back to that relationship, even though he's striving for it, but he literally can't because that galaxy doesn't exist anymore. And so there's this real undertone of sadness in that story as well. And especially in that 4th episode, when they're having that dialogue at the end, kind of just prior to that, finale fight, you're like, dang, like, when did we stop watching Lego Star Wars and start watching, like a deeply moving, dramatic, moment in a show like this? It was really great. I think their relationship I don't wanna say carries the show because I think the show is strong regardless of their relationship, but is definitely, like, the highlight of this show for me personally.
Right, and you got me thinking just as you said this. The fact that almost every show, movie, you have the main character is going through something, and normally in this type of show, he's able to get back to what he wants, right?
Mhm.
But he quite literally cannot anymore after this.
Right.
That's different. That's new,
Yeah,
that's fresh.
yeah.
And that's something that, listen, I know it's Lego and whatever, but this should have been an actual show somewhere. This should have been something else, like an actual live action show. Maybe, we got to get these writers on some live action shows. I'm just saying. But the fact that normally you would be able to get back to what you wanted, and you're not able to. I think that's just a huge plot point.
Are you telling me the plot of Rebuild the Galaxy was just the original scrapped plot from The Acolyte?
Probably. And they said they passed. They
Yep.
actually passed. What could have happened?
But it's a really good point you bring up that, like, they end the show in a way that doesn't feel like it's the way that it should end. like you're moving in your head like, all right, we're getting to episode 4, like he's gonna be able to get back to his galaxy and reunite with his brother. And then you quickly realize that's not where the show is going. You're like, oh, I almost respect them more for making the
Yes.
decision to not do that. Like,
Yes.
it sets the show up for another season. It makes me, long for this relationship between Sig and the old Dev. Just like really surprising in so many
Yes.
ways that we cared as much about this storyline as we did. But
This is what the Last Jedi was trying to do. They were trying to be different.
yeah, and it worked here, and I think it worked more than some people think it worked in Last Jedi. Hey, I will stand and die on the hill that Last Jedi is a better film than The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, I
Just
mean, that's a very big hill.
I mean,
Don't worry, there's
there's
a lot of people. There are a lot of people that will, I'm sure.
some people out there think Last Jedi is the
Really?
worst Star Wars film, yeah, and I'm
Oh, okay.
like, I just think it might not make sense plot-wise, but it is far better film. Anyways, another soapbox that I could be on for a while, but I'll hop off now and touch on our last pleasant surprise that we wanted to focus on. The camera work in this show was really intricate, and the stop motion was done the same as the Lego movies. Just all the scenes where Sig, especially, is force building and
Hmm.
like forming ships and then like landing in them and then continuing to form around him. Just the way that this show uses the building of Legos in that stop motion process, it felt really cool. And meanwhile, the camera is like rotating and panning and in and out. Like it's done really well, the camera work in this show. And definitely adds, I think, a lot to this show for what it's worth. So pretty cool shot here if you're watching the video version of the podcast of the dark version of the Millennium Falcon. It was pretty fun when that when that popped up on screen for the first time. But um, we had some roles that we wanted to call out as well in this show. Of course, if you've seen Rebuild the Galaxy, you know this, but if you haven't seen it yet, kind of the premise of this show is that because of something that happens in the first episode, the galaxy is torn apart and rebuilt, and everything is upside down more or less. So the people who are good are now bad, and the people who are bad are now good. And there's kind of like some, you know, uh, in betweens here and there of people who are you're not really sure, and people who are just different than they were before. But um, Joey and I each wanted to highlight probably our favorite of each of those. Joey, would you like me to highlight mine first, or would you like to highlight yours first?
Go first.
Mine, and I think this might be just a little bit of like a cop out answer because I love seeing all these good guys as Sith lords like together on the screen, all carrying red lightsabers. But particularly Darth Jar Jar was a fun one. That I mean, if I'm being honest, when I saw the original trailer for this show, um, and saw Darth Jar Jar, it was a moment of like, holy cow, they're actually doing that.
Yeah.
And I can say, like, half the reason I wanted to watch this show initially was because Darth Jar Jar was gonna be in it, and I thought that was hilarious. So it was so fun to finally see those, fan theories, actually played out in this show, and it was done so well, and kind of getting to see the cast of characters of Darth Rose Tico, Darth Kit Fisto, Darth Hammerhead, who, fun fact, is an Ithorian Jedi named Rusty, who first appeared in Lego Star Wars: The Yoda Chronicles. And in the show, Sig Griebling's comment references a joke about nobody remembering his real name, and he kind of looks disappointed. He's like, "Oh, he didn't remember
Oh,
my name either." Darth Nubs from Young Jedi Adventures is in this, which is also a really funny inclusion. Darth Jyn Urso is in this. There's even an unnamed Jawa Sith Lord who's involved. So uh, mine would definitely be seeing all these good guys, a lot of whom are not just good guys, but also Jedi, recast in these roles of Sith Lords, and but especially Jar Jar. That would be my number one. Who was your favorite role swap, Joey?
I mean, there is no surprise. If you watch till the end of this series, the Landalorian, Lando in Mandalorian armor. How could I not love this? How could I not love this? This was absolutely my favorite. I know it was a very short, like little scene with him in there, but it really lines up. It really gets us ready for maybe a season 2. With him and apparently Bad Grogu. I do want to see a Bad Grogu. Grogu already gets into some trouble eating some animals and doing a lot of the things. So to have the Landalorian now, who I think you mentioned earlier when we were talking off of before we started streaming, before we started recording, was that's actually Billy D. Williams that is
Yep.
voice acting that. So we didn't have that earlier on. One, because I didn't know it, and two, it might have been a spoiler for anybody who hadn't watched it yet. But to see the Landalorian here at the end, because I when we first saw that it was the Mandalorian, because I think he had his helmet on. I'm like, oh cool, it's the Mandalorian. Then he took his helmet off. The Landalorian. What a good pun on that name.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what the likely other antagonist of season 2, if we get a second season of this show. I'm excited to see what the Landalorian has to offer, as well as Bad Grogu, which also is a good segue into asking the question: are we going to be having a season 2 of Rebuild the Galaxy? It would
Please,
certainly seem that that's the
please.
case. And I would be utterly disappointed if we did not have a second season of this show.
If you have to postpone Skeleton Crew for whatever reason just to get Rebuild the Galaxy season 2, I would be fine with it.
Oh, bold statement. Bold statement. Yeah. And that's the other thing we were talking about. I think when we first watched these episodes, I feel like the process for creating this, like the timeline feels like it could go faster than a normal live action show.
Mhm.
Like, is it unrealistic to think we'll have a second season of this like summer of next year?
Right, yeah.
Or maybe like a super accelerated timeline of like holiday season of this year? I doubt that will happen, but
Right.
I would love it if it did.
I mean, think about like when like Rebels was out,
Mhm.
or when any of the animated series like Clone Wars or anything. I mean, they used to crank those out like crazy. I don't know what more, which one would take more production to make. Maybe this is because of more of the stop motion animation, maybe it's a little bit more difficult. I'm not quite sure, a little bit more cumbersome. But either way, they're able to knock these out in a pretty quickly. And I feel like these always kind of pop up a lot faster than the live action shows do, where you're
Mm.
just like, oh, I didn't know that they were working on this at all, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden this pops up. I think about when Tales of the Jedi came out, and we had like
Yes.
zero idea that was even happening, and then all of a sudden they dropped and they were amazing. So like no shade to spy on sports, but I think the animated shows are the way to go in Star Wars.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about what could be done in a second season of this show, and let us know your thoughts as well. What do you want to see most from season 2 of Rebuild the Galaxy? Man, Bad Grogu is staring into my soul right now, and hopefully he'll be a fun inclusion in the second season of this show. So, uh, normally at this point would be when we begin our process of concluding the podcast. However, I've been informed that we have a special segment in today's podcast
The Aussie is
titled,
interrupting.
yes, the Aussie interrupting Gibbo's Easter eggs. What do you got for us, Gibbo?
A couple of things I noticed, but mostly I'd found, watching a couple of videos and stuff. I just wanted to add a little bit extra because these Lego shows give so much more than you watch on your first watch. But one thing that also ties into the self-awareness that I really liked, and it's a little bit rude, but when they talked about Greedo shooting his shot first, that was quite funny.
That was a good
I
one,
really enjoyed that. But also in tie-in with that is that if you notice their clothing, Han is wearing Greedo's clothing, and Greedo is wearing Han's clothing.
That's a good one.
True.
So yes,
Greedo and Leia together.
I knew there was something weird about Han's clothing.
yeah, if you look
I
again,
could not figure out what it was. Yeah, I could not figure out what it was, but yes, that's exactly what it is.
So yeah, they've just swapped clothes.
Incredible.
So that was a bit of fun. I did like that cheeky little dig. And we got at the start we got Kylo Ren, and of course he was shirtless.
He was shirtless. Yes,
Which
that's
was a bit
right.
of fun.
There is a section of the fandom who very much enjoy the shirtless Kylo. Shout out to my friend Jer, who constantly wants shirtless Kylo just all over Star Wars.
And I'm
I
sure
believe
my friend Bean
it's-
Pie would enjoy that as well.
I believe the actual term for him is Buff Kylo, is it not?
No,
Possibly,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like I've seen that somewhere on like Star Wars forums or something.
or Swallow Ren or something like that. Maybe?
Oh, that's a good. Yeah, I think that is right. Yeah,
Or
yeah,
Swallow. Now I think about it.
yeah.
I do like that. Now this one I actually did notice. I noticed it in the corner. You didn't talk about it in the reaction, but Sig, when he's revealing that he can use the Force and stuff, and then a little bit later he goes into his apartment. On the shelf, you see a Jedi book in the corner.
Oh, I definitely didn't see that.
Yeah, I
That's a
noticed
good
a little.
spot.
Yeah, just as he's looking out the window to his friends out there. Yeah, there's a little. So he's obviously, because he said he's been using it for a couple of years, so he's been reading.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Catch.
When they pull the stone out, and there's a lot of cutscenes of what's happening across the galaxy. There's one in this little room where Yoda turns into Mr. Crumb.
Salacious? Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah, so
Crumb.
it's just Crumb. Yeah. Yes.
But you notice two other little ones there. One little in the corner, Babu Frick,
Oh, it's Babu.
wow.
I totally didn't see that. That's awesome.
and
Is-
the only other one we can notice here is Sebulba.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
what I was gonna say. I
Sebulba,
think that's the
yeah.
Bulba. Yeah.
I'm curious who's in the
The
hooded.
two hoods.
Who
We
the two hooded
can't
ones,
really
yeah.
tell, but yes, that was
That is Sebulba.
a nice little reveal. Now this
Yeah, you
one,
definitely have to like go back and look at these to be
Yeah.
able to see those. Nice.
little Babu. And next one is this one when they were on I think is it the Battle of Geonosis? That's correct?
Yeah.
That's right.
So if you look at Anakin and Obi there, they don't look like they did in that episode.
Oh,
Look at the lightsabers. Different. They used what I think is episode 3's version of Obi-Wan and
oh,
Anakin instead.
that's a good
Huh.
catch. Yeah, because that's an episode 2 fight, but with the episode 3
Characters
like costumes, yeah,
Yeah.
characters, yeah.
and lightsabers.
Interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah, because he had green one then. Oh yeah. But this was before they switched, right? Because then I forgot what the after
Yeah.
effect was after they.
They all
but this
became
was-
Geonosians with lightsabers.
Right. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Lightsabers, right? Yeah.
Yes, that was a
Interesting.
little one I found that was quite curious. Don't know if that's
Good catch.
a writer's mistake or if it was a.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like that was. I don't know. That seems like that was just a mistake. That you know you're right because they're definitely not in their right garbs there.
Hmm. Any thoughts, Ben? Are you
Yeah,
puzzled?
I'm just like looking at their hair. I feel like their hair is their episode 3 hair, not their episode 2 hair.
Yeah. And
Right. As well as their
his
like
clothing
outfits,
as well.
lightsabers. Right,
Yeah.
Pretty much everything. Yeah.
Obi-Wan's lightsaber almost looks red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's a little fun one that I found. Max Rebo on his little pod
Nice
racer
Vivo.
looks
Yeah,
like he
yeah.
did in Return of the Jedi with his keyboard in front of him.
Oh yeah.
That's
Oh
good.
yeah, it does look like a keyboard in front of him there.
Yeah.
Like even on the pod racer.
And his little
Nice.
speaker and next to him. Yeah.
I love
And
Max
also
Rebo.
with
did
the
you know
pod-
that I
what's
think there's
that?
a Max Rebo like story too in a certain point of view
There is, yeah.
And I do like the water too with the little bits of Lego mixed in with the normal
those-
water. Subtle things.
Just
like
those like little details like that just really make it like even more special.
Yeah.
that. And then
good
we've
touch.
got Luke's pod racer who had his father's pod.
Wow, that's a really good one. Huh.
Oh really?
Same pattern and everything.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Man, good finds on these.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Now this one here is probably my favorite. When they were in the trash compactor, which is obviously a callback to episode 4, Luke
Mhm.
has a little thing to say and turns and walks out the door and looks at some lights on the wall. Which looks
Yeah, I did notice that.
particularly like
I did
the
notice that one.
moons on Tatooine. Which is very
Tatooine,
cool.
Yes.
Little pause. That was
Yeah,
one of my
I did
faves.
notice that one. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was you, Joey, who called that out while we were watching that episode.
Yeah.
Then in the cantina, there was a little character. Zori Bliss was in the cantina.
Yeah.
Didn't think.
Yeah, she was look there real quick.
And then the scruffy little nerf herder was the callback from what Leia said to Han in episode 5.
Indeed.
So that was pretty
Herder?
cool.
Yeah.
Did we ever learn the names of that guy behind Zeg?
Sig.
Sig
Dev.
and Dev. Why do I
don't
always
think
want to say Seg and Div?
Second div. Like Sigmund and Froy.
Yeah.
And Roy. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I still mess it up.
It's these 3-letter names: Sig, Dev. Anyways,
Yes.
both scruffy looking nerf herders.
And the last two, this one's kind of a bit Australian.
Oh.
Got a bit of flavour to it. So the person who voiced Servo was Michael Cusack, who's an animator. He's an Australian animator, but he was a co-creator of Adult Swim. I'm not sure if you
Okay,
know
yeah.
if you're aware of that. But servo is an Australian term for a gas station or a fuel station. We call them servos. So if you want to go down to the
really?
gas station to get some fuel, I'm just going down to the servo. And gonk droids being the fuel for Star Wars was a kind of nice little tie in there. So
little Aussie, Aussie
so
shout out. I like
Aussie,
that.
Aussie voice and the name Servo.
By the way, I love this character because we finally get to like hear the thoughts of a droid.
Yes.
Yeah.
A gonk droid.
And apparently all thoughts of droids are an Australian accent. So good to know. That's canon now, by the way.
Canon.
Yep.
That was very cool. And the last one, just a little one, was Rey's prison reminded or mirrored Maul's prison in Clone Wars Season 7.
Wow. That's a really good catch.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Huh.
That was so quick too. Yeah, I wouldn't have ever caught that.
Yeah.
Very
fun.
good.
Anyway, that was some Easter eggs I found. Back to you, Ben.
As we were
Give those Easter eggs.
as we were watching that episode where Servo first gains the ability to speak, Joey and I were immediately both like, "Hey, Gibbo's gonna like this."
I did see
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
Yes. And I thought it was very cool to as the show went along in the intro, he gonked in the first episode that he was like, "You're watching Star Wars."
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Well, and then after the third episode, because I think he gets exploded between during the end of the third episode, and then in episode 4, the opening, he's like all sad and dead looking.
Powering down. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the opening to episode 3, we definitely didn't see coming, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible that they did that." So, great finds and good catches with all those Easter eggs. Those were fun.
Yes.
And,
I mean, Lego in itself is always going to have a lot of like little Easter eggs. So yeah, shout out to Gibbo for doing the research and finding all of them for us.
There
on the
are
podcast.
way more than I found.
would imagine.
That yes. Things like
that
the
could
planet,
be a fun.
the planet that they were going to, Alistair Nor, is something like where all the free builders in Lego Star Wars are. That's their home planet. And things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of lore in there.
Man.
Huh. Cool. Well, as we conclude our discussions today on Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, once again, how would you rate this show on a scale of 1 to 10? Let us know in the comments of the video version of the podcast or over on the socials if you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, and we'll display those responses on next week's episode of the pod, which, speaking of next week's episode of the podcast, it is officially the 2-year anniversary of the very first Hoth Hangout podcast, where Joey and I talked about Andor episodes 1 through 3 for a solid hour and 45 minutes with no document to go off of, just rambling off the top of our heads. What a time it was. Yeah.
What a time.
It was a time.
The Wild West of the Hoth Hangout.
Yeah. We'll be showcasing all kinds of, I guess, for us, nostalgic stuff of just like probably clips of the podcast, our favorite moments, like our most viewed videos, our most disliked videos, our maybe best comments of the past 2 years and stuff like that. So we'll have all sorts of fun things like that in store for next week's episode of the podcast, and it's going to be a fun one for us on that personal note. And episode 99, by the way, as well. So the following week after that, a little bit of a spoiler teaser. We are going to likely be doing a live stream for episode 100. Stay tuned for more details about episode 100 to the socials of Hoth Hangout, as well as episode 99 next week, when we will likely officially reveal what we're doing for episode 100. So lots of fun in store the next 2 weeks here on the Hoth Hangout podcast. Excited to have you all along the ride with us as we journey towards episode 100 and the next week in 99, when we commemorate our 2-year anniversary of the pod. Hope you can join us for that one. As a quick reminder, if you're not yet subscribed to the Hoth Hangout podcast on YouTube, check us out there for the video version of every podcast, as well as the newest reactions to Star Wars shows when they go live, including our reactions to Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, both of which are available on the YouTube channel now. Shout out to the 454 of you who are currently subscribed over to Hoth Hangout on YouTube. You can contact us via email at hothhangout@gmail.com with your Star Wars thoughts, questions, or otherwise, and we'd love to showcase them here on the pod in a future episode. You can contact us, or excuse me, I should say the Hoth Hangout podcast is findable wherever you get your pods, including both Apple and Spotify. And if you're listening on either of those platforms, or any platform that allows you to leave a 5-star review, leave a 5-star review on the podcast. We would appreciate it very much. And it also allows other Star Wars fans to more easily discover the podcast as well. We're on the socials on TikTok, Instagram, and X at Hoth Hangout. On each of those platforms, follow us there. You can also find the link to the Hoth Hangout community Discord server down in the show notes of today's episode as well. Joey, any last thoughts on Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy?
The Mandalorian, make it happen, guys. Just season 2. Maybe you know what I'm hoping. They already have a season 2 done.
Ooh.
And after Skeleton Crew is done, they're gonna drop it.
Surprise!
That's my hope.
Christmas time drop, perhaps.
Christmas time. Oh yeah, I guess that's. You know what? Yeah, they're gonna drop it on Christmas. Season 2, 8 episodes.
Ooh, I love it. I hope so.
But yeah, this was a fun show to watch. And especially going along with what Donald Glover had said earlier, it's fun. Let's have fun with Star Wars. And I know there's no consequences. This is not something that is canon or anything like that. We just needed a little bit of a break of all the seriousness, and I think that's what Rebuild the Galaxy brought to us here. So I was glad we were able to enjoy it. And all the shout outs, all the deep cuts that all Star Wars fans, and like I said earlier, Legos fans, that probably really, they really connected with. So I just being able to connect those two communities, although there is a big crossover between the two as well, just to be able to have that, I think is just something special. But no, this was fun. I'm glad we were able to watch it together and enjoy all of the silly things that were the Rebuild the Galaxy.
Absolutely, yeah. It definitely fulfilled the expectations of humor, and I think it far exceeded expectations of story. So, all that is a good mix for a hopeful second season of this show. Looking forward to seeing that hopefully at some point in the near future. But until then, we appreciate y'all for listening to today's episode. Want to give one last thank you to Gibbo for producing today's show, video, and assets, as well as all of the Gibbo fun facts and Easter eggs, which were showcased throughout today's episode. And also Gibbo, who is the cornerstone of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Man, that would be like, what would happen? Like,
Ooh.
what? Like, I would be good side. I would turn into a and you would turn into a lover of the dark side. Joey.
Probably one of our guests, probably one of the guests that we've had, probably would become one of the hosts of the show. That it would be chaos.
Yeah. Well, once again, thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. Shout out to George Lucas. Shout out to Dave Filoni. Shout out to all things Lego and Darth Jar Jar this week. Can't leave out my guy Darth Jar Jar. So Hope to catch you all in episode 99 of the Hoth Hangout podcast, where we will be doing our 2-year anniversary of Hoth Hangout. Going to be a fun one next week. Hope you all are able to tune in to that. Once again, hope you're having a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever or whenever you may be listening to this. And appreciate you all so much for listening to this week's episode. And until next time, may the Force be with you.